Leigh Brown. This is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. Today, I'm bringing to you a multi-pronged conversation with John Ritten from Mississippi. You will get to hear about Hurricane Katrina, the Realtor Relief Foundation, and then I even quiz him about Jazzland. So I think you're going to want to enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. So if you're in real estate and you're listening to this podcast or watching it and thinking, man, I need some more Leigh Brown answers in my life. Well, guess what, friends? I have a new program that is launching right now called Answers.Real Estate, where I will give you every bit of insight I have to help you grow your real estate business, help you better respond to consumers, to provide a more excellent real estate experience so that the next time you land on crazy shit in real estate, you'll have a better solution to whatever you ran into. Answers.Real Estate. There are monthly plans available. You will love it. Get your coaching. Sign up with me today. How are you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, thank you for all your advice.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you had a good time?
We had a lovely time. I mean, I told Steve I could literally buy that little townhouse we rented. You weren't kidding. You can walk to everything in this much space.
Yes. It is. It's a small little footprint, but it's starting to grow outward a little bit. So
no, they don't like that. There's lots of signs in yards over there.
I know. Yeah, I know. I know.
No more $10
It's a fun little spot. And I'm glad you got to go to New Orleans as well. That's always fun as well.
Yeah, that's what my son had said when I told each kid, you know, the year you graduate, you pick the family vacation. And he said, I want to go eat our way through New Orleans. And I was like, let's go eat.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
I eat my way through New Orleans every weekend.
One of the jazz clubs on Bourbon, it's one of the old one. Was it Fritzels? I can't remember. I'm not hip enough to remember.
Terrible with names.
But anyway, it's been there since the 60s. And it said they had Dixieland Jazz. And I asked the bartender, I said, I know it's a 1-drink minimum. Does Coca-Cola count? Because I've got 2 teenagers. And she said, absolutely, bring them in.
I was going to say, you should be okay.
Like, only in New Orleans is it? Oh, yeah, it's fine. Bring them into a bar.
Oh, yeah. It's its own environment, that's for sure.
But the funniest part was my daughter, who's 19, she's sitting with us, and the banjo player he was trying to get her attention, and she wouldn't even look at him. I'm like, Cora, the band member's like trying to get your eye.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Well, I am glad it was a great trip, and I was glad I was able to give you some advice of things to do. And hopefully, like I said, it all was fantastic because there is a lot to offer down here, and it's kind of fun to explore.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I knew you would know that area well enough because I knew I had to get them to Beauvoir because he is fairly comfortable with their history. That's not going to last forever since they keep putting Marxist on the ballot everywhere. And what is up with that guy in Jackson wanting to close down the Texaco because there were shootings in the parking lot? Did you see this?
I saw that. Yeah, I did. So
it's totally the fault of the gas station.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy. But oof.
And the minute they close it down, they're going to complain they don't have a gas station in that neighborhood. That's what comes next.
It's always crazy. So.
Okay, so the format of the show is just basically we talk real estate, we talk stories, and some people tell a specific story. But I wanted you to come on simply because while we were in, of course, New Orleans and then over in the Mississippi Gulf Coast, you still see the remnants of Katrina, and I can't believe it's 20 years next year.
It is hard to believe it's been 20 years. I'll tell you, I remember when Katrina hit, and I remember after all the devastation occurred, people said it's going to take at least 10 years to get some sort of normalcy as far as finding your way around, sites, growth and development. And I thought, wow, that's a long time. And here we are 20 years later, and there are still those remnants. You're absolutely right. So I'll tell you our biggest issue, and I'm sure this is an issue for all coastal areas, is the insurance. So many that have built back are building back further north. And so our big east-west corridor is I-10. And I-10 is about approximately 5 miles north of the coast. So you're seeing a lot more development north of I-10 prior or post-Katrina, where prior to Katrina, most of the development was south of I-10. So it's a big shift, and it's simply a matter of getting out of the zone of hurricanes, bad weather, things of that nature. So that's why you'll still see a lot of properties that are sitting vacant, surprisingly, 20 years later down along the coastline.
Well, I wondered that because you can see these beautiful oceanfront lots, and
Yes.
in North Carolina, they would be built on, provided they're not a non-rebuildable lot. But there's so
Right.
many of them that were obviously wiped out from Katrina. So it's the insurance that keeps people from rebuilding more than the
Insur-
permits.
it is insurance is a big one. The insurance cost is just, it's gotten so high that you're seeing a lot of people just opting to develop in other areas
But
rather
then what
than
do
on
you
the
do with
coast.
that property then? Because obviously the property values, I would assume, of those vacant waterfront lots are still really high because it's
Yes,
waterfront and
correct.
the values are up. So they're just paying taxes on land they're not using.
Yes.
Is the municipality going to take them and make it into parks? What are they going to do with them?
Well, no, I'll tell you. So we have seen more development has occurred in, I'd say, probably the last 6 years than we had seen prior. So after Katrina, we then had a couple of big hurricanes that came through the region after that that really stifled development, stifled the influx of new insurance carriers, stifled the development of entrepreneurs wanting to come and develop. So in the last 6 years, I'd say really the whole coast of Mississippi is getting more notarization, I guess, or notoriety, or play. And I can't think of the word, but anyways, more acknowledgement. And you're starting to see more people from out of the area discovering this area that they may not have ever seen before. You know, you hear so much of the Florida coastline, maybe the Alabama coastline. You weren't hearing as much about the Mississippi coastline. So now I think with positive articles and reviews that are going out there, you're starting to see more entrepreneurs wanting to move to the area, and they're willing to take that gamble and starting to pick up some of those beachfront properties. So if you would have been here maybe 5 years ago, there was even more available than there is now. So, and every year that we go without a major disaster, and I feel like it will continue to develop. So that's what we're hoping for, and that's what we're seeing in the last 5-6 years.
Well, and building standards have moved so much
Yes.
since the properties that were built prior to Katrina. So that storm hardening, I think, is a commonplace discussion with builders when you're in any kind of a storm zone, whether it's tornadoes in the Midwest or it's hurricanes at the coast. And that's got to be a factor that gives people a little bit of peace of mind to say it might be worth the risk to have that lifestyle on the water.
It is, and you're absolutely right. So people love the water, right? I mean, people want to be near water. People love the water. There's just something about it. So you are seeing more and more development that is coming. And so residential wise, especially, the rules have changed. So now, of course, maybe where those home sites were built on the ground, now they're building them 17 feet up in the air. And there's a lot more restrictions, trying to make them tighter, more sound to withstand any type of force of nature that may come the way. And as you said, more and more people are always looking for water, always like the peace of mind. And it's beautiful to look at. You can get out and enjoy it, boating, sunbathing, whatever you're into, fishing. It is something that, again, we're discovering, and we're seeing much more development. Again, if you would have been here 5-6 years ago, it would have been looked completely different than it does today. And I think we're moving in that right direction, and hopefully we will continue to do so.
I mean, I can say that because I've been to Biloxi more than one time. And of course,
Right.
being a big history nerd, I always go to Beauvoir when I'm there. And what is fascinating to me, and by the way, viewers, listeners, if you don't know what Beauvoir is, that's the last home of Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy. And that was not his lifelong plantation home. This was a house that his wife got to hold of while he was still under house arrest and a man of no country. But it's beautiful, and it's from the 1800s.
It really is beautiful.
And of course, I'm sitting here thinking, well, how come Beauvoir withstood Katrina, but the neighbors didn't? Right. And then you do the full house tour and you see how high it sits up, and they didn't build it high for the storm. They built it to cool the house.
Correct.
And part of me thinks maybe we should go back and revisit some of the building standards of the 1800s instead of trying to make everything look like a production house off the back of a tractor trailer right now.
I would love that.
I mean,
I'll tell you another thing that's really neat. I'm kind of off the subject a little bit, but for history, and I don't know if you got to see it here. It's sort of a jewel that we have here on the Gulf Coast is Ship Island. There's Fort Massachusetts out there. It is a really cool fort. It's about 12 miles north or south, of the mainland. There's barrier islands out there, and on them is an old fort from the Civil War days. And it's basically pretty much intact, and it is phenomenal to go and visit. It is so cool if you're a history buff. It is really a neat thing to see. And,
okay, fine. Why didn't you tell me about that before? I brought my family to Mississippi.
I guess you didn't ask.
Okay,
don't ask, don't tell, right?
I'll come back and I'll have to come see this one.
You just need to come back.
I mean,
the Gulf Coast loves having you back. So we love having you back. And the realtors down here always enjoy when you come. So you just need to make another visit.
I mean, obviously, I do the big hair, so I belong in the South with my people. And this totally has reminded me that we did not tell the viewers and listeners who you are. So viewers and listeners, let me introduce you to John Ritten, who is the past president of the Mississippi Realtors from 2023. We were presidents together. John, tell them where you do business, how long you've been doing it. Give them a little bit of the John Ritten story.
Okay, real briefly. So I have been in real estate for 32 years. I am originally from Chicago. My wife is from here on the Gulf Coast, and she grew up, born and raised in Gulfport. I moved down here in 1991, started my real estate career, and I basically handle the Gulf Coast is about 70 miles long of Mississippi, and it's maybe about 10 to 20 miles deep. So I handle sort of the central to the western side of the coast. So Biloxi, Gulfport, west over to the Louisiana line is basically my area of expertise. But we have agents in my office that cover all over. I am the broker owner of Remax Coast Delta Realty, and this was a family business that was started in 1984 by my grandfather. And so, again, when I moved down from Chicago in 1991, I joined the family business and ended up loving it, the crazy career we're in, right? Seen the ups, seen the downs, and it's just been a way of life that I have totally embraced. And it's a fantastic lifestyle, and it's a great way to meet so many neat people. Customers, clients, fellow realtors like you, Leigh. It does afford the opportunity to really get to know your community, folks around you, and nationally, great people that you would otherwise not have met.
I love what you just said, that real estate helps you get to know your community better. We don't talk about that, the knowledge piece a lot. We talk about how realtors know their community, but we forget to tell them that when you get into the game, you're fixing to learn it from all viewpoints. That's something that translates into, I mean, everything in life. All right. So you've been in the business for long enough to have gone through lots of different storm conditions, market conditions, housing conditions. Right. The thing that I have always wondered, and of course, being on the Realtor Relief Foundation board, we come in after natural disasters and do what we can to help out. But when you look at an area like Biloxi, Gulfport, you look at Bay St. Louis, look at New Orleans, all those areas that Katrina just put underwater, hammered, destroyed the inventory, and the houses that didn't wash out were filled with mold. People had to leave. When you're in real estate, we talk about an inventory crisis now, John, but that's an actual inventory crisis because your inventory vanishes. My question to you is, how do you survive as a commission-based business who's 1099 when you no longer have a product to sell and the people that were even under contract, the house they were buying is gone, and so everything just disintegrates in one storm? How did the real estate business pivot, and how do you survive those times? Because obviously we're recording this at the beginning of a new hurricane season, so storms happen, disasters happen. It's not unique to your area, but you lived through one of the biggest natural disasters in American history.
I'll tell you, that's a great question, and I'll give it from my perspective a little bit of as well. I remember, of course, we used Katrina because that was the big one. I remember when Katrina hit, and I had 2 little girls at the time and 2 dogs and my wife. And I remember we went to the Florida Panhandle, and then I came back with one of the guys I came back with was a policeman. So we had the early access to get in right away because they did block off the state. So I came in, and I will tell you what I saw was I've never been to war, but I imagined that a war-torn country would look the way that it looked when I came. And I remember looking at everything, going back to Florida that night and telling my wife, I think it's over for us. I think we're going to have to do something different. We'll probably have to move. It was just, it hits you. And then you kick back and you realize, okay, what can I do? And so I came back again the next day and realized it was amazing because, of course, the coastline was wiped out. As you said, houses are gone, inventory's gone. We didn't have any help going further west because New Orleans, being a major metropolitan area, was wiped out for the most part as well. So it was like, wow. But I remember coming back to my office, my house, and then to the office a couple days after, and there was a line outside my office of people looking for housing. Because again, I-10 sort of runs east and west through Mississippi. North of I-10, for the most part, was intact. So all of a sudden, you had people that were living south of I-10, and again, this is 70 miles long, 5 miles deep, were looking for housing because there was nothing. So anything that was north of I-10, for the most part, was in good shape, maybe had some tree damage, maybe had a little damage, but was intact. You had people scrambling for housing. So I walked to my office and thinking it's over, came and there was a line of people at our office door looking for houses. And so it just, all this, your adrenaline kicks in and you just go to work, right? So we do what we do as realtors. We kick it in, we find a way to make things happen. And I remember we just, all of a sudden, houses, a lot of people wanted to move that were in houses that were intact because a lot of the services were gone, right? And you had a lot of people that wanted to take those houses. So automatically overnight, all those houses that were here in northern, areas that were not flooded had gone up in value overnight. I mean, crazy, insane value. And I remember talking and our agents talking with buyers, listen, these prices are artificially high. So I don't know if that, no, we don't care. We don't care. We need housing for our families. We need something, the price does not matter. So it was just a weird dynamic. So we as realtors were extremely busy. Probably, I would say the Katrina and the next year were the busiest years in real estate that I had in a number of years prior to 2005. Although prior to 2005, as we all know, the market was busy everywhere until 2007, 8, whenever all that meltdown occurred. But overnight, our market just increased crazy bad because we had such a demand of buyers coming from Louisiana, Mississippi that needed property. So anything north of I-10, if you were a seller and you were thinking of getting out, services are gone, you named your price and it was selling. Rentals, all of a sudden, every rental filled up automatically, but purchases were crazy and people were buying houses. Even if they had tree damage, they were buying them as is. Our courthouses were down, so they couldn't file deeds. It was crazy. It was just a crazy time. But again, being realtors and doing what we do, we made things work. We worked with title companies the best we could. We worked with buyers and sellers, trying to explain to them how this market may change. But it was one of those things we just dug in, got to work. And really, we found housing for most people that were looking for it. Not everyone, but most people. And some people had to move farther north than they wanted to be, but they wanted to be somewhat in this area. That was what they had to do. And then, it evolved and it worked. And again, doing what we do as realtors, we found a way to make things happen. And I remember, as an aside, I remember we had so much help from people, from fellow realtors, talking about Realtor Relief. I remember at that time, I was president of the Gulf Coast Association of Realtors. And I remember I was on the committee. I don't know if I was president yet, but I was on the committee. And we had realtors from across the country that came down here to help. And it was just, I'll never forget it, taking them around, showing them the sites. And they didn't just want to see it. They wanted to help. They raised money for families. There were groups that came down that actually took a hammer and were building to try to fix things. And that to me was a moment when I realized how important realtors are. And it was just an aha moment for me. And not only realtors, though, we had church groups come down from all over the place. We had different parts of the country adopt certain communities to try to help. And we as Mississippians, as I'm sure is the same in South Carolina and all states, we all rolled together, helped each other. Families were moving in with other families. People were taking in folks that were friends and families, trying to help them with whatever they needed. It was just, it was the worst of times in Mississippi, but it was the best of times in fellowship and seeing how we as people come together in a crisis. And so those are some things I will never forget. I hope I never see it again, but it was something that was memorable and sticks with me and will always stick with me as, again, worst of times, best of times situation.
What jumps out at me in thinking about this? So I remember when Katrina hit, I had a newborn at home and was pregnant with another one. So, of course, you spend a lot of time sitting around when you're in the middle of all that. And it's on the news, and my husband and I are staring at it and watching it happen. And I guess from our perspective in the Carolinas, it was your whole state, right? Yeah. So you say Mississippi was closed and New Orleans that was just its own brand of mess. Right. So to my perspective over here, there were no houses at all, but then you describe it in the way that realtors always see things from that most granular level of, oh, you just drive 30 minutes, you'll be fine. So we're going to go over here. It's fine. These are not good. No, but we're going to go over here and it's going to be fine, because the general optimism of our profession does really impact people at a time when they need somebody to give them some optimism. But then this idea that your life just got upended by a storm, and so you go buy a house somewhere, and I don't know if I have that kind of fortitude personally, mentally. I hate moving. I like every other real estate.
I do too. Being in real estate, you'd think we'd love moving, right?
Right. No,
I don't like moving.
Nope. So these people lost their home, and their first reaction is, "It's fine. We'll go buy one." I'm like, well, that is so impressive to me, because that's that resilience.
It is the resilience. Now, of course, there were a lot of hugs, a lot of tears, a lot of stories, and that's all part of it, because the emotions come. I mean, but then they did, like you said, they kick in, and it's like instinct comes in. We've got to do something to solve a problem. It's not going to solve itself. What can we do? Who can we partner up with that will help us? And again, the realtors, as we are,
and the Baptist men,
we know we come together.
And we know those churches, they sent the Baptist men, because the Baptist men, there's one in every church, got that van, that mission trailer ready to go. I mean, high five, Baptist men.
And we had a lot of them. We had some fantastic mission people that just really helped and made the job, again, not an easy job, but came down and eased people's minds. Yeah, and they just come, and they came from all over the country. And, I can't thank people enough for their generosity, their willingness to help. We always hear bad things in the news, right? And there's so many good things out there with people, that the stories we don't always hear. And those are the stories I think are so important to tell, because there are so many wonderful stories out there of Americans helping Americans, people helping those when they need help. And that was an example for me to live through, to see. That was just a wonderful example of humanity all the way around, coming together and trying to help those in need. And they were in need. And as I said, I remember it was really hard when I came the first time and saw the devastation, and then just driving an hour and a half or an hour away to Mobile on the way to Florida, and thinking, wow, over here it looks perfect, like nothing ever happened. And until you come and see it, you see it on TV, until you come and actually see it, it's really hard to imagine. I mean, as you saw when you were here, whole blocks at that time were wiped away. And, markers that we knew growing up or for years, we didn't know where we are driving down the beach, because, certain streets, now those houses that were landmarks or businesses were gone. And so it was just a whole change, a whole mindset. And, it was something completely that I had never gone through. And really, again, I hope I don't go through ever again.
What do you think the area is going to do in 2025 next year at the 20-year memorialization of something that absolutely just, I'm sitting here just processing the idea of losing your landmarks, because I know that when we go to Myrtle Beach, I know exactly what my landmarks are now, which ones are gone that were there as a kid. We've lost a lot of our great places due to development, but
sure.
I'm looking for them because it checks a box in my head. And to imagine them being gone, I'm feeling emotional right now about an area that I don't live in, and a storm that I didn't personally experience. And so what do you do on the 20th anniversary of that? What do you think is going to happen?
So I think there will be a lot of celebrations, a lot of remembrances on the 20th anniversary. I'm quite sure that there will be quite a few memorials, a lot of remember those that didn't survive. Remember, I think it will be done very nicely with all of our coast leaders in the various towns. We're very much like a lot of coastal areas where there's all these towns, they all run together and they all have their own vibes. So they all handle things a little bit differently, but I'm sure there will be a lot of celebration of development and rebirth. Also a lot of remembrance of and being cognizant of those that did not make it in the destruction that occurred. So I know it will be done, and it will be done right. And I think there'll be a lot of people supporting, those efforts that go forward next year at this time.
I mean, it's just a great reminder, because that it's not just the devastation that happened. It's what you keep coming back to. It is the response to the devastation, the positive outpouring of humanity, the reality that life can go on and does go on is a really good message, because y'all might not get hit with a storm like that again, because you don't want one, God forbid.
No, we don't want one. We do not want
to get hit. So you become a positive marker to other areas to say, look, if we can make it through and overcome, y'all can too. So there's a lot to be said for that. So of course, I'm sitting here thinking what Realtor Relief Foundation should be considering in the way of messaging, because one of our big pushes as a foundation, and frankly, John, it breaks me on every level that so many realtors don't even know that they're part of a foundation like this that swoops in after disaster. But FEMA was a nightmare after Katrina. It took so long to get the relief in, so long to get the help in.
Yes.
But the Realtor Relief was there quickly. Other realtors are driving in immediately. The Baptist men are there. And it's just a reminder that it's the small person-to-person efforts that really make a difference more so than the government efforts. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes when we rely too much on the big when we should be relying on the small.
Well, Leigh, and to your point, I'll tell you, last year, you and I were both presidents of our state, right? So for me, one of the most rewarding things that I did all last year, and I talk about this often around the state when I'm traveling, I'm not traveling as much, but when I was traveling around, is we had some tornadoes in North Mississippi. As you said, every area is susceptible to something, right? And I'll remember I was on the Realtor Relief Committee, and I still am, but I was on it last year as president, and I liked it so much I wanted to stay on it again this year now that the presidency is over. I'll tell you, when you're looking at applications of people who have lost everything, and I'll tell you, and you know, we spent so much time as a group last year in our state working on looking at applications, approving applications, and thankful for the Realtor Relief Foundation because they did come through and able to help fellow Mississippians or whatever state you're in, being able to help those in need. I'll tell you, for me last year, a lot of time was spent doing that because we had some really bad disasters in our northern part of the state. But I'll tell you, that was the most rewarding part of my year, was being able to sit. I was honored to sit on that committee that looked at those applications. And I'll tell you, when you look at the pictures and you hear the stories, and it never gets old. I mean, everyone's a different situation. Everyone's a story that needs to be heard. And when you hear them, you can't help but want to help them. And that's where, again, I hope realtors know about Realtor Relief. It is, I think it's one of the best things we have because it does directly go to help people. That money goes to help fellow citizens across the country that are in need.
And not just realtors. We don't just help ourselves.
So no, not just realtors. In fact, most of the people we helped last year were not realtors. So it's just another thing that realtors do. And that's where I'm so proud to be a realtor. I know these are tough times right now in the realtor industry, you know, but being a realtor, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's a fantastic group of people that all are hardworking and dedicated. And, you know, I can't say enough of good things about being a realtor.
Man, so you just drew like a perfect analogy for the storm that is enveloping organized real estate right now. Is a Katrina-sized storm.
It's a storm.
And it's going to cause Katrina-sized devastation in some ways, but it's also going to cause Katrina-sized response and rebirth and opportunity if we just figure out how to go person to person, like you were talking about last year after the storms, and like we do every day in our real estate business. It is person by person, and it is situation by situation. And
I think we're going to come out of this new storm really well. I mean, it's just transparency. And I mean, if we're having conversations and being transparent, I think things are going to be fine. I mean, that's all. I think it's going to be a shift in the way we do some things. But isn't that life? Life is always throwing us curves, right? It's how we adapt to those curves that are thrown to us. And again, as realtors, those that are serious realtors that really care about their industry, that really care about their clients, customers, this shouldn't be a major deal. Yes, it's change, and change is always scary. I'll be the first to admit I'm always nervous with change, right? But after I look back on the changes I was so fearful of, I'm always like, that wasn't really a big deal. And I think this will be the same type thing. I think the changes are going to be good changes, a little bumpy. I think there will be a little bumpy ride at first, but I think the changes will be good. And I think the industry will come out stronger because of the changes. I really feel that way.
I think you're right, because the ones that are not operating at peak efficiency right now have a very stark choice to make. It's either I can't deal with this, or it's how do I become so unique and different in my business operation, and they're being provided that opportunity, whether they want it or not. So may as well take it. All right. So before I put you off the show, I have to ask.
Oh, no.
So have you seen the Netflix documentary Closed for Storm about the Jazzland disaster where Six Flags / Jazzland was just outside of New Orleans?
Okay. So I'm terrible at remembering names, but I may have seen it because I've seen something about that. Now, a real life story. So we had season passes. My children were little right before Katrina. So we went to Six Flags. Before that was Jazzland, became Six Flags. We went for the 4 seasons, I think that, or however many years it was open. We had season passes, went all the time. Really enjoyed it. Of course, Katrina came and water sat there and damaged everything. It sat there for a long amount of time, and it's still sitting there deserted, and it's very eerie. And I know they make some films over there. One time, I have to be honest, I got off the interstate and I went over there and drove through as much as you could because there's barriers, looked around, and it is eerie. But it's also kind of fascinating in a weird way. So I don't remember if I've seen that movie per se, but I've seen movies that featured it. I just don't remember the names, but fascinating movies, very interesting. And again, living so close, having gone over there and knowing the park the way it was prior very well, it is very weird and moving, honestly, to go over there and see it.
Well, again, that's your personal memories and your landmarks. For you, that's different. I mean, I'm staring at that documentary because it's about commercial real estate. I'm a real estate junkie. And then we drove past coming from New Orleans to
you can still see.
And you see it and you're like, what? It's still
it is. It's
and then
wild.
It's also a government red tape disaster because you've had developers trying to do something with it for years now.
And for years, and they keep coming up with plans. And then, as you said, red tape holds it up. So it's one of these, who knows what's going to happen, if anything, and if it does, when, right? I mean, they've been proposing things for years, wanting to do stuff with that land. So
the one guy even ran for mayor, Tony or something. He's my new favorite. I loved him in the documentary, and he should have won the mayor of New Orleans, but he didn't. But anyway, if you're watching this and you know anybody in New Orleans that can hook me up with the Tony from the documentary, I want to have him on to talk about that because
I want to hear that one.
Right? I mean, this is, frankly, if we come full circle on Realtor World, it's why we do political work. And I think the world misunderstands, first of all, the fact that politics is way different than policy, and the bulk of what we do is policy work. But an abandoned amusement park, which has been devastating for housing values in New Orleans East.
Yes, it has.
Could have been solved if there were policymakers that understood real estate and development or would listen to them. So it's all encompassing, but it's everyday realtors that try to drive those conversations. So I'm hoping that somebody, I mean, I don't think Connie Kyle watches my podcast, but somebody out there knows the queen bee of Louisiana real estate. And so
it would be great to have something go on there because just as you said, they have wanted to redevelop that land and it would prosper. It would help the whole region in that New Orleans East area. And there have been lots of proposals. I just wish I'd love to see something come to fruition because you're right. It would change and it would help that area to grow.
And then you can take your grandkids there one day when you have.
I hope so. With their grandchildren one day.
I mean, you got to have dreams, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You do.
I'm not ready for that yet. I need about 5 to 6, maybe 7 more years, but then I'm going to start pushing it hard.
Oh, gosh. I love it.
All right, John, if anybody wants to reach you about anything in Mississippi real estate and specific the Gulf Coast, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So I can give you my phone number. I can give you my email, whatever is best for you that you normally give out. I would say my phone number is 228-363-0648. My email is jon@realtor. No, I'm sorry. jon@Ritten, RITTEN.realtor. Isn't that terrible when I don't even know my own email address?
That's kind of awesome, but it's also proof that we're in a text-heavy world now, and email is where you send all the junk.
Right. So. Or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, any of those sites as well. So,
and of course, because many of y'all are listening to this or watching this while you're doing 4 other things, don't stress out because all of John's contact information is in the show notes for this episode. So feel free to go connect and reach out and find out how you too could get more out of your realtor life. If that's something that's plaguing you right now, John will give you some of his tips. John, I appreciate you coming.
I sure will. Thanks, Leigh. Always good to see you.
Appreciate you. All right, friends, hit the bell, subscribe, say something nice about John in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
By the way, friends, don't miss my brand new coaching program at answers.realestate, where you can have access to Leigh Brown, submit your questions, have them answered, meet like-minded professionals, have an entire library to help you build your business no matter what happens in the market. Get signed up today. I promise you'll be glad you did. So if you found value in this episode, please like and subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell, and catch another amazing episode by clicking above. Crazy Shit in Real Estate is also available in all of your normal podcast apps. So if that's where you like to hang out, go find me, click subscribe, and most importantly, leave me a review that says you think I'm awesome, my guests are awesome, or this content is just exactly what you were looking for. And then, by the way, if there's something you need, you want to learn about something, you can comment below anytime. You can also send me a direct message if you need to remain anonymous. No judgment. But anyway, I'll only judge if you forget to subscribe and click. I'll see you next time.